Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin Shaw, Alex Wolf, and we are continuing with our first regular season mailbag. Alex, what wonderful questions did we get from the best fans in the world today?
Yeah, to close things off today, we've got what position we think the Knicks most need to upgrade right now. Talk about some of the best alcoholic beverage options at the Garden. Talk about RJ Barrett and what the problem might be with him as of this particular moment. Talk about Randall and Taj a little bit and some of their various things that go with their season. And then also, finally, we talk about Tibbs and Leon and if we should take a long form view and not overreact to what's going on right now or even this whole season. So we'll talk about all that coming up right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and we wanted to thank you, as always, for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. Remember, we are now available on all platforms, including YouTube. And if you see us right now, you already know that. And we also want to remind you, today's episode is brought to you by Calm. For a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount off a premium subscription. Go to calm.com/LockedOnNBA. I am Gavin Shaw, a play-by-play broadcaster getting ready to do about 50 high school football games this weekend, which I am just ecstatic about. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the world, and a Knicks beat writer at Clutch Points. Very, very exciting stuff. And Alex, we are continuing our mailbag series, so let's, without any further delay, get right into it. Justin Ramos at It's Justin Ramos wants to know, what position do you personally think needs an upgrade? Related, what position do you think we're most likely to upgrade? I'd still argue lead guard, but with the lack of available upgrades/prices, I wouldn't be surprised if the front office's next move might be Mitch related.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I still hold the belief that this team is still pretty good. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that despite the struggles recently, the starters. And people can say all they want that, oh, this is a finished product. I don't believe it's a finished product. I think they're still working at it. They're still getting consistency right. There's been a million different cases in the NBA of teams that add, high usage, big money, whatever, like big minute players to an existing core. Sometimes it can take a minute for that all to gel together. And we've sort of seen like the bench already is gelled because it's the same bench as last year. The starters are having their struggles. They're trying to learn Tibbs' defensive system. They're trying to learn how to play with each other on offense. Kemba taking more plays where he's not the primary guy. Julius taking more plays where he's not the primary guy, stuff like that. So I don't really think that there is a position that I think, quote unquote, needs an upgrade. Like, I'm willing to be patient for at least, I don't know, 10 more games or something like that. And I think we saw really good progress in that Indiana game as far as the starters looking better when they came out of the gate and looking more symbiotic on offense, looking like they were communicating better on defense. So I don't really think that there's like a huge need to upgrade any position. If I was going to maybe highlight one, I would say, other than what Justin said, I don't necessarily know if it would be Mitch related because I think that they still, even if they don't think Mitch is necessarily the answer, I do think that they feel confident enough with that rotation of Mitch, Noel, and Taj to continue going with that at center because those are basically the exact type of players that Tibbs likes at that position. I think maybe Fournier and the shooting guard spot, if I was like gun to my head, going to have to pick one that they would, try to trade and upgrade. I think maybe post December 15th, as much as you want to keep Fournier, I think if they could use him as the $18 million building block plus some younger guys to get a better option at the 2 guard, maybe that's something that they would look into. But I don't really think I would be extremely surprised, let's put it this way, if the Knicks made any sort of big trade this season. I think they might make one or two little trades around the margins because that seems to be a thing that they're into, which I like because I like adding all those little extra second round picks and junk like that. But I don't think that they're going to go crazy. But I don't know how you feel about that, Gavin, if you think that there's any more like clear position of need right now.
No, I mean, I'm with you in that. I think it's pretty unlikely that a move comes during the regular season, and I still think the Mitchell Robinson stuff is weird, and kind of upsetting, but also fascinating in that, like, this is a guy that you and I were just, I mean, obviously forever. Like, we changed the name of the podcast to Locked On Mitch at one point. Like, we were so high on, we were over the moon for, and then this year, like, it just left like a sour taste in my mouth between, like, again, like the loss of his mobility, like, which again was sort of the quality that I felt made him special. The fact that his offense, maybe not his fault, like he doesn't get a lot of chances to even show it, but hasn't really seemed to progress past run, jump, and dunk. And it feels like at this point, like he's not going to be the guy we thought he was. So if I'm still looking at a spot, like I know last pod or last mailbag that we did, I suggested the DeAndre Ayton trade. And the thing is, like, there just aren't that many DeAndre Aytons out there, right? So you got to, like, at the center position, you got to really work hard to find that guy. There's a lot of solid centers. There's a lot of guys who can do what basically Mitch is doing now. And I thought Mitch could do more than what Mitch had done in the past. And instead he's sort of doing less than what he's done in the past. So if I had to pinpoint a spot, that might be it. While also noting, I think there is a world where, again, the upgrades are already on the roster, such as Emmanuel Quickly potentially over Kemba Walker. And that still feels a little like sacrilegious to say. And obviously, like, with Quickly, like, part of the conversation is like we just have such lower expectations for him. Like Kemba still has not had a stretch as bad as Quickly's first 7 or so games, but I'd also argue Kemba's not at a stretch as good as like Quickly's like next 7 or so games. So I think that'll be fascinating throughout the season. If there's a point where, and to be clear, like, I don't think there's a world where Quickly is a better offensive player than Kemba this year. But if he's that much better defensively, and if he keeps playing like he did the other night, like, there's a conversation about, like, or at least Quickly's in the same realm as Kemba offensively. It sounds nuts to say about a multi-time All-Star point guard and Emmanuel Quickly, who is good, but not at that level yet. That being said, like, I think it would more so be an internal situation, or maybe it's Derrick Rose, who's just flat out the next best player, who overtakes that spot and starts playing like 32 minutes a game down the stretch or in the playoffs. So I think the answers are probably internal to answer that question. If they are external, I think I would pinpoint the center spot as the position where you'd see an in-season upgrade. But like you, I think that's kind of a long shot, because the guys that are obvious upgrades over Mitchell Robinson are either unavailable or available for just an insanely high price.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel too. And the other thing to consider too is just like the sheer amount of money that they already have invested in the center spot. So
Yeah.
if you go out there and you trade Mitch along with, I don't know, let's say like Obi, and then I guess if you use Noel to make it work for money or whatever, but let's say you were going after like DeAndre Ayton or something, and you base it around Mitch and Obi and picks or something, maybe like Deuce or Grimes or something like that, and the Suns are willing to talk that deal, then, that's something you can make work monetarily. But then now you're talking about, okay, now we're going to max DeAndre Ayton, already have Nerlens Noel on a 3-year, like $27 million deal, and have Taj Gibson making like $4.5 million a year. Are you really going to commit like damn near 50% of your salary cap to the center position? I just don't. I feel like that would make Brock Aller's skin crawl, and he would never do that. That's just way.
And they
too
just
much.
couldn't do, I think if RJ's not in the trade, you just can't afford it. Like, it's too expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. I mean, because they would probably ask for RJ rightly or wrongly, and I mean, yeah, I don't really see any way you could do that either. It would have to be like RJ or Quickly, I feel like, in addition to maybe like Toppin and Mitch. And just because Mitch's value is at a relative low point right now. Now, granted, if he starts playing better sooner than later, then maybe that changes. But yeah, I just really, I don't think that anything like that is on the horizon before like next offseason, as far as like a major positional upgrade. I think they're going to give this group at least this year to try to figure things out, because I mean, they managed to put this whole roster together over the offseason. It seemed like, we've had flashes of it looking really, really good. So I don't think they would be quick to like right on December 15th make a trade or something like that and make a knee-jerk reaction, because this front office hasn't done anything to suggest to us that they would do something like that yet. But Gavin, before we get to our next question, which one I'm extremely excited about, do you want to let everybody know about Calm?
Yeah, because I mean, this is a pretty tense conversation, Alex. We're actually gonna get to a question that says this later on, but I think we all just need to chill out a little. So when it comes to athletes, we tend to focus on physical fitness, but there's another side to the game that's just as important: mental fitness. Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has teamed up with LeBron James to help you train your mind and become the champion version of yourself. LeBron and Calm know what your mind, or rather, know that your mind is like any muscle in your body. You don't have to be a world champion to learn how to train it. Calm can help you train your brain so you sleep better, reduce your stress, and perform at your best, just like King James. For LeBron, sleep is a critical part of his mental fitness routine. And he says, quote, "Getting good sleep and finding some time to rest is one of the most valuable things I can do for my body and mind. From the sound of rain falling on leaves to bedtime sleep stories, Calm puts me to sleep within minutes, which means I wake up ready for any challenge." So if you head to calm.com/LockedOnNBA for a limited time, you will get a 40% off a Calm premium subscription. With Calm, you have access to the nature scenes LeBron loves, like rain on leaves, and so much more, like sleep stories and meditation, so you can be ready for any challenges that life throws your way. Again, for a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount on a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. Unlock content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/LockedOnNBA. That's calm.com/LockedOnNBA.
And today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. I love Thanksgiving, all the good food and treats and plenty of them, but maybe you want a yummy dessert, but one that isn't so full of calories and sugar. It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. Replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. Eat the turkey Built Bar instead of the, wait, no, I'm kidding. There's no turkey Built Bar. Not yet. Maybe stuffing someday. No, I'm kidding. None of the savory flavors, just those sweet flavors that you love so much. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, and high protein. All of them are covered in 100% real chocolate. Built is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough, go for a Built Bar or two. Share some at your family gatherings. It'll make things less awkward. Maybe Aunt Betty hasn't tried a Built Bar yet. New surprises will be coming out all month, including limited time flavors arriving at built.com regularly. So check the site often. No turkey flavor, but there is a coconut brownie chunk, I believe, that is out right now, which is probably the best special edition flavor that Built Bar has, short of maybe the raspberry cheesecake. So there's also nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, and we're back to get into some more of these mailbag questions. This next one comes from Paul Jeffrey III at Paul the Great 9. And Paul says, "Howdy, fellas. Howdy, Paul. Other than sneaking booze into the garden, what's the best bang for the buck on the adult beverage situation? Hopefully it's not something with gin in it. I've got enough chest hair. Love the podcast. Keep up the great work. Go Knicks." Thank you, Paul, for the kind words. First off, go Knicks. Gavin, you had mentioned on Twitter that I would probably have some insights on this, which I do, but I figure I'll throw it to you first to see if you have anything to throw into the ring here.
I have no insight on this at
Okay.
all. Yeah, it's all you, buddy.
All right. So I have two suggestions. Well, three. All right. One of them is what to avoid. Avoid the beers. I find that beers at sporting events are really overpriced for what you get. So like, why would you want to pay like $9 or $10 for essentially what equates to like 2 light beers that are like 4% alcohol? Like if you're trying to get a little buzz going on during the game, bad choice. Big time bad choice. You don't want to go after that. Pretty much always look for the mixed drink stand. And this works for Citi Field too. It works for Yankee Stadium too. I went there over the summer. Mixed drink stands or like the bar or whatever, always the way to go. Go there, order like a double drink. It's usually like, 15 for a single or 20 for a double. And getting the double is so worth it. Like they heavy pour those drinks and you end up with like a really strong cocktail and probably like the equivalent of like 2.5 shots of liquor in your drink. So like in New York City, 2 to 2.5 shots for $20 is not half bad. So yeah, I usually say do that specifically at MSG. There's the I know at least on the 200 level where I'm usually sitting, there are stands usually sort of like off the main drag. Like there's like the main area with all the food stands, and then there's usually like cocktail stands at the end of those. So go hit those up. The lines aren't usually super long either. And then I forget where it is. I think it's in the upper deck in like the 300 section, but there's like a daiquiri bar too somewhere in MSG, and it's like part of like a bigger bar. Like I think it's the top level. There's like a whole big bar on the one baseline, I think. And there they had like frozen margaritas, frozen daiquiris, and I think one time I had like a frozen iced tea or like Arnold Palmer or something like that there. And those are solid too. Just like, if it's like bitter cold winter, you probably wouldn't want a frozen cocktail, but for those like springtime games, absolutely. That's a solid get and a pretty good bang for the buck. So yeah, if you don't have anything to add to that, Gavin, then yeah, that's my recommendation. But stay away from the beers. Beers are always overpriced at sporting events.
All right.
Although
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I do break my own advice sometimes, and I do get a beer, but I feel like I'm not spending my money wisely when I do.
All I wanted to posit was I went to 2 years ago a Dodgers Yankees game, and I don't know if you've had this before, Alex. I think it's an LA based beer, but it was called Mango Cart. It was delicious. I got an incredible lightweight, so I got a good buzz. I had a Beyond hot dog. I was happy. I was as happy as could be. I'm not a big baseball guy, but I had a fantastic time. Yankees won. Anyways, let's move on to our next question to wrap up the second segment. It comes from Argentum Spectrum. I'm always curious where Argentum got his name. Maybe that's just his first name. Maybe that's his full name. It's an awesome name if so. But I've always loved the username at Argentum Spectre 1, and he wants to know. Presuming RJ's play seems very inconsistent. A few weeks ago, we were thinking that he might have a breakout season, and he's been ... not breaking out since then. What's the problem? So, Alex, this is something we've posited on the podcast, and I'll throw this over to you. When has RJ ever had a consistent month throughout his career? Maybe that's unfair. I probably should do a deeper dive onto his second year game logs, because it felt like there were stretches where he was really contributing. And to be clear, I think the great part about RJ is even when he's not scoring, he tends to find ways to make a positive impact on the game. Like last night was a fantastic example where his defense on Karis LeVert, I thought was really good down the stretch. And eventually the shot came around. He still had the confidence. He hit 2 threes. So that is the counterpoint to my argument. But at least in terms of his shooting, he has rarely, if ever, been consistent throughout his career.
Yeah, I think the more I've been thinking about this lately, I think that RJ, maybe more than any other player on the roster, has his performance tied to just how well the team concept is working. So like, and maybe Fournier is the other guy, but we've seen on these nights when the starters are really not moving the ball well, we've seen Julius Randle go off for a first quarter. We've seen Kemba Walker go off for a first quarter, but everybody else kind of just ends up sitting around watching them. I don't think RJ's quite to that point yet. I mean, maybe you could point to the Pelicans game as one where he was sort of taking over a primary option in that game and kind of just getting the ball on the perimeter and making something happen. But by and large, I think that he still kind of needs his pet sets called for him, like the pistol set with Mitch and, various things to get him some open spot up looks. And that starts getting him in the groove to then, be able to bust out some of that more ambitious stuff later on. Whereas lately, outside of last night's game, I think that he's been a little more marginalized on offense. He hasn't, there are times where it seems like he doesn't touch the ball for 5-6 possessions at a time, and he's not really being featured in first quarters as much, which, it's like chicken or the egg. Is he struggling because he's not being featured as much, or is he not being featured as much because he's struggling? It's maybe a little column A, little column B. But I think that if the Knicks can continue the ball movement and team play that they had going on in the first half of last game with the starters, then, RJ is a pretty good chance to rebound, because I think that he just thrives in environments where, he can sort of still play an off-ball role and have, some some spot up 3-pointers, some cuts to the basket, which we saw one of those in the second half last night, and just various things kind of get his confidence going. And then I think once that starts happening, then we'll start seeing a little more of the super dominant RJ that we saw in the couple of weeks prior to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it really is just a matter of time. Like, I think it's worth remembering that he's still, I mean, what, 21 years old, and I think there are all these parts of his game that, and I know the emphasis of Drew Hanlon in the offseason in the past was like just work on one thing at a time. But I think there were all these parts of his game, especially this year. Like, we've seen flashes of it, right? Like the off the dribble 3-point shooting, like the greater strength getting to the rim that he's worked on. But it's so hard in real time on a team that just has not figured out how to play together yet to implement all that stuff cohesively. So I think it's just going to be a matter of time. And I think in a couple months, like if by the end of this year, you don't see him being at least like the same guy approximately for a month, and maybe that tops out not as like the guy who scored 27 or whatever it was against New Orleans. Like maybe it's a guy who's just consistently like at 18 points per game and like 6 rebounds and 5 assists, but is actually doing it pretty efficiently. And like if that's where he tops out this year, I'm totally happy with that. But I just want to see the same dude night to night. I want to see someone who, and a big part of it is like as you noted, like getting to the free throw line, and like that is how great scorers have consistency, even when their shot isn't falling on a night to night basis. So we will continue to see, but I think the litmus test will be, can he figure that out by the end of this year? And if he doesn't, then you might just have a case of like, again, still really young, still a lot of time to figure it out, but like that might be who he is as a shooter to some extent. And I think that was sort of the concern, at least that I had on him coming out of the draft, was like, is this a guy who can be a great scorer? And I think that's still very much a question. But anyways, let's take our final break, and we will come back and give you 2 final questions. But first, we wanted to remind you, BetOnline rather, is back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of basketball season, and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your #1 spot for all the basketball and football action this season. So head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we're back. Third and final segment. This question, Alex, comes from Nick with a knack. Love the name, at LewisMon 990787858. He had to take that because the first 990787757s were taken with LewisMon. 2 questions. Why can't we reduce Randall's minutes by 5 per game? And why is Taj a better rim protector than, say, Obi or Randall? So, Alex, I will throw both of those to you.
All right. Well, my answer to the specific Randall question, the 5 minutes per game, I don't really see a good reason why you can't. And what's funny is that I feel like if you took off 5 minutes if Tibbs would cut some of his more lackadaisical stretches short by 5 minutes, things would look pretty good. Like, for example, in the game last night, that stretch that he had that was so bad in the third quarter that otherwise kind of marred what was actually a pretty good game for him other than shooting the basketball. I think that his whole game as a whole would be remembered and looked at a lot better without that little turnover laden whatever BS stretch that he had there. So, and that gives you more Obi as a benefit. So awesome. Yeah, totally. I'm with that whole thing. The second part is do you have anything to add to that? Like, I feel like that one's pretty obvious. I think it would be easy to reduce Randall to like 33 minutes a game.
Yeah, no, nothing to add.
Yeah. But then the Taj versus Obi or Randall as a rim protector. So I this was such a great piece that I've referenced it. Like, I mean, it's pushing like 6 months old now, probably, if not older. But our good buddy Benji Ritholtz wrote a really good piece for the Strickland on like the differences between Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel and how they operate as rim protectors, right? And Taj, it's different, but he is a rim protector in the sense that he's not like Nerlens or like Mitch at Mitch's best, where he's just going to gobble guys up right at the rim and block the crap out of their shots with just this like amazing timing and whatever. Though he does occasionally flash that. And he even occasionally blocks 3-pointers like Mitch. I don't know. Taj is the ageless wonder. But mostly his style is essentially creating a brick wall that almost starts around like the restricted area, or maybe even a little further out, and just basically like always maintaining that wall there and not letting guys get to the rim. And he does it so good. He's probably one of the better players in the league at it, because despite whatever physical limitations he has at this point in his career, he's he's still locking up the paint really well. So I think that's the reason he doesn't necessarily protect the rim in the sense of daring guys to test him. He just never lets them get to the rim to begin with. Now, that to answer the part about Obi and Randall, I think that neither Obi nor Randall really do that. Randall maybe physically has the capability, but he doesn't put himself through that because he does so much on offense too. Obi just straight up doesn't physically have the capabilities to do that. He's more of like a help block guy right now, which he's doing really well with, and he's done pretty well in man coverage too, but he's not like the intimidating, center that can just kind of like camp the lane and block the crap out of guys. The other thing though that you really lose with those two out there is the rebounding. So certain matchups, like I referenced this after the Philly game, I think, about Andre Drummond. Like you can't put, Obi and Randall out there against an Andre Drummond, because however you feel about Drummond, he's going to eat them up on the glass. If those two are out there, you need like a more big body center like Taj. So it maybe doesn't all come down to just the defense and the rim protection, and really sort of the total package of what Taj offers, which is, hard screens, rebounding, and, also that sort of brick wall in the paint that is really useful. So that's kind of my whole answer on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically what you said, but I was gonna just Taj's positioning is such that it stops people from getting all the way to the rim. Like he's not blocking shots at the apex. He's cutting off plays before they happen because he's that smart. He's that anticipatory. And to your point, he's really strong, which in its own right, like people isolate rim protection to like, can he meet someone at the summit? Like there's a lot of different elements to it, and a lot like the work. It's almost like solving a problem before it's there versus like it looks cooler when you're like, oh wow, he cut the wire on that bomb at the last second, and it's like, well, but then you have the guy who like found the bomb like 3 hours earlier and just took it out and brought it to the police, and like that's sort of what Taj does. All right,
and it's real quick, just a guy that's come up a couple times in the last like week or so, and we mentioned this the other day, but like even DeAndre Ayton, who I think has proved to be a really good rim deterrent in the NBA, is not a great shot blocker, but I think you would call him a rim protector too, because he keeps people away. There's something to be said. Even Mitch is sort of turning into this like force of nature that people just don't even try to test at this point. And Taj is kind of one of those guys. Like he manages to keep guys just away from the rim, which is the most important part of rim protection, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Final question here from Just Had at had_says, hey guys, Justin from Queens, mailbag question if you're still on. This is year 2 for Tibbs and Leon. This isn't a complete roster, even if we thought they should be closer, and there's clearly changes that are going to come soon. Should we all take a more long-form view and not overreact to the minutia of a long season? Atlanta, Milwaukee, and others have had their struggles this season. Help us off the ledge. I love this perspective from Justin, because I think, again, like when you cover, like we always talk about this on the podcast, when you do a daily podcast, like part of the nature of it is you have to kind of overreact to every little thing that happens, because if not, we couldn't talk about it for 40 minutes every day. And we love, even though our bosses don't like it, we love to talk to you guys for 40 minutes every single day. Where was I going with that? Anyways, the point being, you end up fixating on like all these like little things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And like sometimes it is better to just take more of a long view and say, hey, this franchise by and large is healthier than it's been in a very long time. There's a lot of fun elements to it, like the Emmanuel Quickly stuff we've been seeing, the Obi Toppin stuff we've been seeing, the Derrick Rose rejuvenation project. Just the fact that Kemba Walker's on the team, like I spent so much time like being like, oh, he's not defending well enough, he's overhelping. Like it's cool to watch Kemba like school dudes and like drop crossovers and like have like little up and under moves. Like that's just fun as a basketball fan. And again, like we sometimes lock in on like, well, like when are they going to win a championship? Where is the linear improvement? Why aren't they defending? Why aren't they running back? And like all that stuff is important and it matters and it's significant. But this like you lose the fact that like, oh, this team is just like we were watching Andrea Bargnani however many years ago. Like this is just a whole lot better than what it's been. So shout out to Justin for forcing us to think about that and remind us of that.
Yeah, I think I would just kind of say the same things basically. Like it's sort of like what I said at the beginning of the show with like what position needs to be upgraded right now, and I just don't think there is one. I think that there's something to be said for just waiting. The reality is that for as bad as the Knicks have been this year, they're 2 games over 500, 14 games in, and I think sitting at the 6th seed in the East as of this particular moment, if they play at that same pace, they'll probably hold in that spot. And if that's how the season ends up, I don't think anybody would be all that disappointed as long as they really look like they've made some progress. But I think that we can pretty safely say that, particularly with the starters, it can't really get too much worse than it's been. So presumably the only way to go is up right now. But yeah, I do agree. Like the nature of our jobs, doing this every day is to sort of take each game and turn it into a brand new, perspective on the team and take as many takeaways from it as we can. And I think we do our best to try to treat it like like just a piece of the puzzle rather than the whole thing. But, it's easy to kind of lose the forest for the trees a bit over the course of a whole NBA season where you get so honed in on the little things and the game to game stuff where, running like the Strickland Twitter account, some nights you see it where it's just like the doom and gloom people come out of the rafters the second that anything goes wrong and want to say like, oh my God, the team is terrible, blow it up. What were we thinking? Randall is garbage. He'll never get better. RJ Barrett is like completely regressed now. He's a bust. And Kemba Walker was a terrible signing. Why did they ever even sign him? And, my general stance at this point is kind of just be patient. We'll probably still continue talking on this podcast game to game about certain things that we notice and whatever, and maybe even overreacting to some of them just because it's the nature of the job. But by and large, like I think our general viewpoint and a lot of people's general viewpoint, which is the one that I think is the way to go with, which is kind of like what Justin was saying here, is just to sort of like assess things in chunks. So right now, I would just be thankful for the fact that the Knicks are 2 games above 500 right now, instead of, I believe, at the same time last year, 2 games below 500. That's improvement right there. And there's, 2 very key new players on this team that are getting integrated. And hopefully over the next, 10 to 15 games or so, we'll start to see some improvement from them as well, and improvement from the team as a whole. And maybe they'll rip off another 8-9 game win streak that'll make us forget all about these early season sort of woes, which I say sort of because like literally I I realized this earlier today too. The Knicks are Ricky Rubio and Miles Turner both shooting a career high on 3-pointers away from being 10-4 right now. And I think if they were 10-4, nobody would be complaining nearly as much. So I think everybody would be kind of over the moon if I'm being completely honest, because I would probably I don't have the standings in front of me, but that would have to put them close to the top of the East right now. So yeah, patience. That's it.
Yeah, they'd be tied for the 3 seed right, or tied for the 2 seed right now.
There you go. Yeah. So I mean, that would be fantastic. So yeah, that's it. Patience and stop thinking the sky is falling all the time, because it doesn't really matter that much. Like even if the Knicks underperform somewhat this year, what were the expectations really? Like most people outside of Knicks fans had this team as like at best a 6th seed. And even we ourselves said, oh, I could see anywhere from 3 to 6 seed happening, or even lower potentially.
Yeah.
So, there's a large range of outcomes. Just kind of wait and see what happens is basically my advice at this point.
Yeah. I think the things that ultimately matter are the guys who are still going to be on this team in 5 years, or could be turned into people who are going to be on this team for 5 years, continue to make strides. And honestly, some negatives, some positives on that front, but it's a lot of exciting stuff. So we will wrap on that largely positive note. For Alex Wolf, I'm Gavin Shaw. Thank you for tuning in. As always, a reminder to please subscribe if you haven't already on your podcast platform of choice, and even more importantly on YouTube. We're somewhere around 350 right now. We would love to get all the way up to 1,000 subscribers. We're still working on it, but maybe we'll come up with some kind of prize or some kind of giveaway if we can get to that number. So we'd really appreciate if you joined in. Tell your friends to do so as well. And yeah, check us out. All right. On that happy note, we'll talk to you guys later. Peace out. Go Knicks.